Hey guys, and welcome back to Monka, where life court ensues, but I had played a game previously, and so I kind of want to talk about it because I've set it down for a while, and I'm not sure if I'm going to pick it back up because it's a roguelike, and I was like, oh, I'll pick it back up, and I haven't yet, so I guess I'll get it out of the way and talk about it, but I put about 10 hours into it, and so I feel like I have a good idea of what it's like, but the game we'll be discussing today is Downwell. The game was published by Devolver and was developed by a guy whose name, unfortunately, I cannot pronounce. I'll put it on the screen, but the game originally came out in 2015 and it released on a wide variety of consoles. Honestly, I don't know if there's a console in which this is not available on. It's even available on like the Vita and iOS and Android and shit like that, so it's got a pretty wide base of places where you can play it. Obviously, I played the Nintendo Switch version, and I played the version that's harder to source, which is the physical version, because this was a limited run, and so this was actually hard to find. Would not recommend it unless you like collecting shit, because otherwise you can pay $3 for this game instead of paying like a lot more than $3 for the physical version that you had to source. But like I said previously, I played 10 hours of this game. Put it down about a month ago, haven't picked it up since, and so I just kind of wanted to get my thoughts out there in case I never pick it up again. But Downwell is a roguelike with a K, not roguelite with a T, and it is specifically a platformer. And the long and short of my opinion is that for $3, which you can get it for on most platforms as far as I understand, it's pretty good, to be honest. I would definitely recommend at least checking it out at that price point, because it's not a lot of money lost if you don't like it out of the way, but I found it pretty enjoyable if you can enjoy a hard game, because this game is pretty fucking difficult. But in terms of the graphics and performance, the graphics adapt kind of a style similar to something like the Game Boy, kind of like the original Game Boy. I would say it's a pretty nice aesthetic, to be honest. It's not one that you see in a lot of games. It is very simple and very two-tone. There aren't a lot of colors in the game. There are palettes that you can swap between to change the kind of color and the tint of the game, but otherwise pretty much the main three colors are black, white, and red, and that's pretty much it. I don't mind that, but it does really give it kind of a simple aesthetic, something comparable to, like I said, the Game Boy. But the graphics look nice nonetheless. It's just a really unique aesthetic. In terms of the performance, it performs just fine. The game is very basic looking, so I doubt on any platform that it would perform bad. On the Switch, it runs just fine. But in terms of the graphics and performance, the graphics are a pretty unique twist on what's usually like the pixel-based shit, because it goes for a Game Boy aesthetic. And the performance is fine, and like I said, I imagine it runs fine on everything. But in terms of the music and voice acting, there is no voice acting, so we'll kind of skip over that. But the music is pretty decent, to be honest. It goes for, like I said, that kind of low bit sounding stuff that these games usually go for. It's pretty decent, to be honest. I wouldn't say anything in this game really blows my mind. I think the Shopkeeper theme was probably my favorite song in the entire game, but the soundtrack isn't really all that mind-blowing, but that's fine, to be honest. The sound effects kind of go for that bit crush shit as well, kind of having that low quality sound effects that a game probably on the Game Boy would have, but I kind of like that, to be honest. It was kind of nostalgic. These sound effects can be pretty satisfying as well, and the gumboots and stomping on enemies and stuff like that actually does sound pretty good in this game. But overall, music and sound design is pretty good overall. I wouldn't say it blew my mind, but it does its part nonetheless. In terms of the story and characters, this is something I can glaze over because it does not exist. Some guy jumps in a well and he is falling down the well, and that is the entirety of everything you need to know. It is very simple, and to be honest, roguelikes don't really usually have stories anyway, so it doesn't matter. So the story is what it is. A guy jumps down a well. That is all I can say for it. But in terms of the gameplay, like I said, Downwell is a roguelike with a K platformer in which you essentially just endlessly fall down a well, or fall down whatever, I guess. That being said, you're not endlessly falling. You'll land on platforms as you're falling, so you get moments of respite where you're not falling. You're pretty much falling from platform to platform until you get to the end of the stage, where you progress to the next stage. Every area has 3 stages that you'll progress through before you move to the next stage, and every area has its own unique aesthetic, like a cavern or kind of like a haunted house or an underwater area, etc. Every one of them has kind of their own gimmicks as well. Also worth mentioning is that every stage is procedurally generated, so you won't be playing through the same stages every time. Even though the designs are pretty simple, there isn't anything crazy going on, to be honest, but it does nonetheless procedurally generate. Like I said, you're just kind of falling from platform to platform until you reach the end of the stage. So pretty much what would be procedurally generated are those platforms, and as well the enemy placement, and I guess things like shop and equipment as well. But other than that, what you need to know pretty much is that the main mechanic is that you're falling down a well, defeating enemies with something called gun boots or stomping on their head. The gun boots are kind of just like a projectile based weapon that you can shoot downwards to hit enemies. You can also use it to slow your fall, and it has a charge. Until you land on another platform, it does not regenerate its charges, so if you run out of shots while falling, you'll have to land on another platform platform to recharge your gun boots. The gun boots as well have different sets of equipment for them. So there's one that's like a machine gun, one that's a laser that just shoots straight through some of the destructible platforms. You have one that's a shotgun, which is strong but has a shorter range. And then you have something like a machine gun that shoots faster than the regular machine gun, but that has a lower accuracy. And then you have something like burst that shoots really fast but shoots in short bursts. Some are better than others, and you get these through little cave areas where you can kind of collect and swap them out. You can increase your charge as well. You can increase your life. You can do this through the shop, or as well in some of the cavern parts where you can get the new gun boots, you can also get more charge. Now it's worth mentioning that they're not all created equal, because the shotgun will take up more charges than something like the basic machine gun, and so you kind of have to plan on what you want to use. Something like the machine gun gets like 20 shots, but the shotgun will get something like 5 shots, so you kind of have to plan accordingly on what you want with that. But the game kind of forces you into a position where you have to pick and choose what you want. Every time you collect an item that either gives you life back or gives you more charge, you'll be swapping randomly to another set of gun boots. So there's a risk reward factor to that that's kind of enjoyable, to be honest. As well, you'll run into shops where you can use currency collected through random parts of the caves, as well as defeating enemies that can get you shit like your health back, more charge, or can even permanently increase your health. Now, like I said, it's a roguelike, so every time you restart, all of that wipes. But other than that, the enemy design is pretty unique from stage to stage. You have things like the frogs, which just jump at random, and you also have things like bats that kind of fly around and are harder when you zip by them, because once you zip by them, they can fly down and you're kind of put at a disadvantage since you're always going down. But you also have enemies that you can't jump on and you have to kill with the gun boots, because they gotta keep you on your toes. You can get pretty used to stomping on enemies consistently and never using your gun boots unless you really have to, so those enemies kind of switch it up a little bit. When you move from area to area, it switches up with things like ghosts that can pass through platforms, or even enemies that will kamikaze if they get too damaged. But as well, when you reach the end of every stage, you get a permanent upgrade that progresses throughout the game. Some are created better than others, such as eating enough corpses, which is kind of weird, but eating enough corpses will get you life back, or you can have a companion robot even that will shoot shots when you shoot shots, or you have a laser that'll make it easier to aim your weapon when you're progressing downwards. But like I said, not all of those permanent upgrades are created equal. Some are better than others. Sometimes you have to pick the best of the worst when you get to the end of a stage, because they don't give you any good ones. But other than that, the game is pretty fucking difficult, to be honest. It's mainly due to the speed, because you move so swiftly downwards that you'll just kind of get trapped in shitty situations sometimes, and as well, it's kind of hard to predict the enemies at points. The slower you move, the easier the game is, but as well, the game attempts to encourage you to move faster. That being said, runs can last anywhere between, I guess, 10 and 20 minutes is usually how long it took me to do a run. When I started playing the game, runs would take like 3 minutes because I was just trying to zip through it and I just kept getting slaughtered. But other than that, the game has a light meta progression, but the progression does not carry over from run to run. The progression is pretty much that you can unlock additional characters that have different attributes that you can use. Like one has more health but no upgrades, and another one kind of has floatier controls. As well, you can unlock palettes that swap up the color palette, but other than that, like I stated, none of your equipment or health or anything like that carries over from run to run. But overall, in terms of the gameplay, I found it to be pretty enjoyable. If you don't enjoy a roguelike that's really hard, then you wouldn't really enjoy this game, but I think there's something here for people to enjoy if they just want something kind of simple but nuanced in the way that you approach it, because the game is not really all that complex, but you kind of learn what type of builds are useful and not useful while progressing through the game. But overall, my opinions on Downwell is, to be honest, it's $3 pretty much everywhere, unless, like I said, you're physical hunting. In that case, you'll pay a lot more. But other than that, if you're getting it digital, you're probably going to pay $3 or at least $5 or less for it. And for that price, I'd say it's worth checking out if you want a hard roguelite that's focused on platforming. But I would say it's definitely worth a look for how inexpensive it is. And honestly, I enjoyed my time with it. Even though I don't usually get down with roguelikes, I enjoyed this game nonetheless, and I found it pretty fun and enjoyable. But thank you very much for watching. Until next time, I'll see you. Stay chill.